Welcome to the Pickleball Guru's newest webinar, Stand By Me. I'm Randy Mantiply, and I'm here with Prem Carnot, the Pickleball Guru, author of the best-selling book, Smart Pickleball.
Hello, Guru Nation. Welcome.
And for the record, I put on the purple shirt first. We just completed the first of 3 boot camps in nearby Vero Beach. The last webinar we recorded at an Airbnb in Sacramento, but today we're actually recording
In Sebastian, Florida, like my hat says,
which is
near Vero Beach,
and we are in
my mother-in-law's house.
the last time it was the Big Red Barn. This time it's at Prem's mother-in-law's house. On day 3 of boot camp, there's the boot camp favorite, Dancing with Your Partner, and this is all about partner positioning. The title of this webinar is Stand By Me, which for many people remember the Benny King song as well as the movie, but there's also one of my favorite songs by The Clash, Train in Vain, that has the lyrics, "Did you stand by me? No, not at all. Did you stand by me? No way." Those lyrics are not the type of conversation you want to have with your partner after a point, are they, Prem?
I'm not sure about the lyrics part of it, but I probably think that would be an accurate statement.
And so the first thing I'd like to talk about is when you started pickleball at boot camp, you tell a story about how you got really good where you were, and you were probably, what, in your late 30s when you started pickleball?
That's right.
Okay. And then you went and played against a couple of guys that were probably somewhere around twice your age.
Absolutely.
And how much moving around on the court did you do?
It looked like I was running like a chicken's head cut off, and I was running so much, and those gentlemen were not moving so much, and were making me work so hard, and the ultimate result was like 11-0 and 11-0 twice, and I thought that was some sort of a mistake, and I tried a third time, and it still remained the same. So I realized that my athletic abilities alone was not going to take me there. So there was something else which I had to figure it out.
And I was talking with one of the boot camp participants that's going to be coming to Vero Beach next week, and he had a great line. He said, an ounce of positioning is worth a pound of speed.
I don't know exactly the measurement levels, but I'm probably sure there's a lot of truth to the positioning plays a part. The placement and positioning in this game is a very important part. I truly believe so, and I've experienced it. And as this is going to be my 8th year as a full-time coach, and I think I've seen a lot of improvement just by figuring out the best possible placement and positioning in a pickleball game.
And so, first point, you've got to stand next to your partner. Why is this so important? Why shouldn't one player hang back and cover the baseline and one player cover all the drops that someone may do up at the kitchen line?
It's pretty simple logic, geometric logic. If one person is in front and one person in the back, generally there's a huge gaping hole right in between you two, because it's very difficult to cover that spot. And there's this very popular theory that you are actually covering 2 halves, and it's really not true. But we'll get more in detail about that later on. But as this podcast, the webinar goes on, but the most important part of this one is the hole between the two is so big that it's not an ideal position to be one up, one down.
And let's assume that the players are standing next to each other. How far should they actually stand apart from each other?
My suggestion would be around about 6 to 7 feet from each other would be your best possible bet.
And so we're too close to do anything with our paddles to show you, but generally what you recommend is the forearm sticks his arm out, and then the person with the backhand puts their backhand out, and they should try and get the paddles to touch, or somewhere close to touching.
That's exactly right, and that's what I would probably suggest, more to be closer to each other. Or if you have 2 forehands in the middle, same story, or that distance apart from each other.
So let's start off with the return to serve. Your priority is to get up to the line as quickly as possible because that's where your partner is. And how do you recommend doing that on the return of serve?
I think I've talked about that in the Smart Pickleball book a few times, and I know for people who want to really realize it, one of my very fundamental part of my teaching is basically about how much time you can buy yourself. So my intention is always to try and find the best possible time management. How to hit a return of serve, which would be effective. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm only saying that it's one of the most effective way to do it because the idea is to get to the non-volley zone line. Having said that, if you hit a fast return to a serve, oftentimes, I'll be the first one to tell you that I've experienced that myself. Sometimes I get caught standing in the no man's land or no person's land at that point, and we get nowhere to the non-volley zone line as quickly as we want to. So the best option probably for me is to hit a lofty return, knowing that the serving team has to let the ball bounce. So a lofty, deep return would give you enough time. In fact, I jokingly say that if you can do that, you can literally hobble yourself to the non-volley zone line.
And now moving to the next play of the point, the third shot, a lot of players, and I mean a lot of players, notice that their partner is taking the third shot and then they just take off to the line. So, for example, if you and I were playing and I saw that you were going to get the third shot, I would just run up to the line. That way, one of us is at the line. Is that the way to do it, or?
There's no ideal way to do it, but the most suggested opinion for most of us is to probably move with your partner is what I would suggest. If you're one who's going up and the other person is going as the other person is trying to attempt a drop shot, in most cases when that happens, you're dealing with some of the highest level of players with great skills, and probably who have a lot of control in their drop shots, and they know that they're going to perfectly hit. And then there is this osmosis which happens between the partnership, which basically knows that the person knows that the person is going to hit a drop shot. For most of us who really struggle with drop shots and who are not able to hit systematically 9 out of 10 drop shots and where we want to hit it, that would not be a recommendation I would give. I would really recommend you to move with your partner together and make it to the non-volley zone line safely.
And how do you do that in terms of safely?
Um, Again, I talk about this one in my Smart Pickleball book, whereas like when you're trying to hit a drop shot, the apex or the highest point of the ball when you're hitting the drop shot has to be about 5 to 6 feet over your non-volley zone line, your own non-volley zone line, which would give you a perfectly great drop shot into the non-volley zone line, allowing you to get safely immediately to the non-volley zone line. But at times, the problem is when you know that you have hit a bad drop shot, when you know that you have hit the apex is a little bit more deeper than that, trouble starts. At that point, you move as much as you can and stop before your opponents are about to make contact to the ball, and then try to make another drop shot, possibly, and then keep moving and stopping as long as you know you're making your way. And so technically, most of the people say that the third shot has to be a drop shot. I don't agree with that. The third shot drop has to be wherever your opponents are. If both the opponents are at the non-volley zone line, then you hit a drop shot as much as possible. But if the third one is not a great drop shot, then maybe the fifth or the seventh or the ninth could be a best option. But in that case, both of you as a team have to move together to make that happen. Because if you are moving up and one is down, there's a big hole between you two, which actually exposes you off. Does that make sense, Randy?
It certainly makes sense to me, and I just wanted to ask, because this question comes up a lot, especially at boot camp, is who determines the advancement?
Who determines the advancement is very simple. It's the person who's actually hitting the ball. So imagine in this particular scenario, if Randy and I are playing together, if you are hitting the drop shot, I would watch and make sure that where you're going to go with it. And if you move and stop, I'm going to stop with you. Imagine the next ball is being hit to me, and then at that point, I'm the one he's going to be tracking. So the leading partner, as I often call it, changes depending on who is hitting the ball. So it doesn't have to be one particular person who is actually moving, but it is about the person who's about to hit the ball, because pretty much that is the person who's trying to, or at least attempting to get to the non-volley zone by trying to hit a drop shot. And if it is effective, they move all the way down. If it is not, then they make their way, but the advancement is determined by the person who's hitting the ball. So that's what I call the leading partner.
And that's on the third shot when you and your partner are serving and trying to get up to the line. But let's back up just a minute on the return of serve, because some players try to get that return really wide and maybe even short. Why may this not be such a great idea?
While hitting it wide, there's always a risk of the ball going out, and that's not a great idea. The idea is to get almost almost every time your returner serve back to a safe zone. So hitting a wide one, basically, you might get away with one or two of those, but it's not really the safest one. As far as the short return implies that you're bringing the serving team, which is at the baseline, into the non-volley zone line, meaning that you have given them the option to get to the offensive line, as far as I'm concerned, which is the non-volley zone line. When you're at the baseline, it's a defensive line. When you're at the non-volley zone line, it's an offensive line. So if you bring them in, you're inviting trouble.
And one of the things that I always look at, especially during rec play, is what my partner's doing when he or she's up at the line. And if there's a case where I do it wide and maybe it comes up short, one of the problems is I'll notice my partner doesn't shift over to cover, which opens up a passing lane for the person. And when I notice my partner not shifting over, that's when I start making a better effort to hit down the middle, so that way my partner doesn't move.
That's a very good
Or doesn't
idea.
have to move, I should say.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. In fact, and it's one of the reasons why I often suggest, like, for people who really don't have a lot of ball control, at least initially, who don't have the consistency, hitting in the middle takes away the angle a lot from your opponents, and also allows you as a team to be able to approach. And as you said, Randy, that if your partner is somewhere already in a certain line and they don't really line up to be in front of the ball, it actually makes it easier so that you can both be in front of the ball as quickly as possible.
And what we should mention, we kind of alluded to it, is the alleys. And just to refresh everyone's memory, you note that the court is divided into 3 alleys, and 2 players can't cover the whole court, and 2 players can't cover all 3 alleys either, right?
That's right. I would probably say, at any given time, the team has to cover 85%, 80 to 85% of the court. That's the maximum you can cover. Give your opponents the 15 or the 20% of the court, which is the least favorable space where they can hit you. Cover the most important zones where your opponent can hit, and you move as a wall. That actually takes care of giving them the impossible shot to go for, or a shot which is much more riskier, low percentage shot, and forcing them to hit there, or finding out the solution to make a better choice. But being together about 6 to 7 feet away from each other and being able to create a wall is a very important one.
And I think you mentioned that with this wall, for example, if you're covering the 2 alleys, one side on the right and one side in the middle, with the open one on the left side, for someone to
I don't know about the 10 to 15% of the players out there, because I don't know if there's so much of us in that category. I think there's a decent percent of really good players out there, but I think we are probably talking less than 2% of the pickleball community of players who can probably hit consistently winners very sharply that way. That's a pretty low percentage. We're probably talking At the most, you're talking maybe about 200 to 300 players. Um, so that's not probably, if someone is hitting you constantly winners on that side, you probably know that at that point you're probably dealing with some of the best players in the country or in the world. The rest of us, mere mortals, we are probably not being able to do that type of winner. So we probably would. It would be safe for us to know that if we cover the 2/3 of the court, leaving the most important, least important part of the court, I think we're pretty much safe in almost every cases.
And when it comes to positioning, this is where the rubber really meets the road. Tell us all about the box.
Before I even go to the box spot, the more important part of before we go into the box is one of the important things about positioning is the positioning is actually dictated by where the ball is. So wherever the ball is dictates a position. If say imagine the ball is somewhere on on the right hand side. If say for example it's in front of Randy right now in this particular case, if Randy is there is about to hit the ball, then that means his direct opponent will be in front of him, covering that 1/3 which is there. And then imagine I am his partner, and then I am about 6 to 7 feet away from him, and generally his my direct opponent would be actually right in front of me, because he or she will be about 6 to 7 feet away from his partner. So basically meaning that we are on a wall, and it really is a very beautiful place to be. And I often call that particular situation, if you actually juxtapose that one in an image, or you are inside actually a box. It's like a big square or rectangle and you're in. And I often say that in my boot camps, that as long as you're inside that box, you're totally safe.
Ready?
No, wait, put your paddle up. Because I know you're supposed to do this. We have a string between the two of us.
Okay. Ready?
I never heard of that. I did.
It didn't work.
Okay. What can I say? Oh, because I wasn't across from you because you had the ball.
You're not across of me.
Well, you really can't cover the whole thing.
Can't you? If it is that, she'll cover
You
everything.
can. If you're me, obviously you can't.
Ready?
No, I really don't know what to do now.
Yours. Yours. Ooh, baby. Oh.
Okay. We're learning our lesson.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate. It's not about being sarcastic about it, okay? Mine.
Okay, I'm not in the right place. Is that what you're telling me?
No.
What
So-
are you telling me?
So I'm going to start with this one. So obviously this combination is, no, I'm not talking about you as a combination. This type of
Oh, wait, I saw in your book you had those angles and those thingies, but I don't remember how to implement it.
no worries. You're going to have it now. So here is a simple thing. There is this wonderful thought process in our is that a lot of people think I'm here. This is my side. That is Randy, and that is his side. You stay on that side. I'll take any ball which is coming on this side. And as wonderfully Deborah put it out there, absolutely not possible. Absolutely not possible.
It is though.
What?
If you like cover 3/4 of the court.
Yeah. So we were talking about two halves here.
If we do it the right
You know,
way.
a lot of people think this is my half. Don't enter my half,
Oh, yeah,
which is impossible to do in this game.
right.
So how you're going to do this one is you're going to have to divide this court into 3 sections. 1/3 is one alley.
Right?
1/3 is the middle.
Right?
1/3 is the other alley.
Right.
If the ball is in front of you, you cover 2/3. Which 2/3 are you going to cover?
This third, this third.
You as a team. You as a team.
Together.
These two. We'll leave this one open.
Yes. Why?
Because that's a lower percentage shot.
That's a low percentage shot. 85% of my chances are right here. That's a 15% chance. Don't pull the trigger if you don't have to.
Nice job.
Yours. Mine. Yours. 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 Mine. Oh, baby. See why he's stepping back?
Yep.
I knew it. Before you even hit it, I knew.
If you move inside that box, you're totally safe. The problem is sometimes, say, imagine Randy's direct opponent hits a cross court, and I go down to take that ball, but Randy does not follow me, but they have moved in to be in front of the ball, and that means that Randy and I are not anymore in that side of the box, which means that we have given our opponents a chance to drive right in between us because there's a gaping hole right in between us. So box is an important thing. So as long as you're inside that little box of however you want it, it's a square or a rectangle box, you're going to be much safer. And that's where you want to play most of your strokes, inside that box.
And your ultimate goal is to try and move your opponents to where they get outside of the box.
Yes, that's the intention, is to try to break them out of the box. And once you break them out of the box, your openings are, it'll be screaming in front of you. You don't know where it's going to go. You pretty much know that there's a gaping hole right in between them. And that's where you want to really hit most of your winners.
Now, let's say you're safely inside the box, let's say on the left side of the court, and some players get enamored with a cross-court dink, like you were saying, and why may this not be such a great idea to do a cross-court dink all the way across across your opponent's kitchen like that?
I wouldn't say it's not a great idea. When you're doing a cross-court dink, generally you're crossing over from highest part of the net to the lowest part of the net, and so there's a lot of safety going cross-court, and it's also more easier because it's a longer distance when you're going through that, which gives you a lot more safety so that you don't really miss balls. So I don't consider going cross-court dink as much as a difficult one, but by doing that, what it really does is sometimes it isolates one of your partners. If I'm going cross-court against my opponent, and then if you're supposed to get involved in the game, I actually not helping you because I'm putting a ball way far away from your reach, which means that it's not ideal. So and also while you're doing this cross-court dinks, you're moving from one third to the different third every time. So if I go cross-court, imagine if you're going to my partner, that means then after I hit the cross-court dink, that means I have to take my middle third as Randy slides over to the alley third, and then as my opponent hits a cross-court, then I move back to the alley and bringing Randy into the middle. And this can be constantly done very easily. In the highest level of players, they do that all the time, but most of the time they are quite physically adapt and endurant to last pretty long. For most of us, we don't have that time or maybe not be able to hit 50 or 60 dinks that cross-court way. I think we might have to find a different strategy.
And that's where I was going with this. A lot of people will do a cross-court dink, but then they'll stop and admire it and not move.
And getting away from the box.
Yeah, and then your partner either has the choice of either going down to protect that alley on the other side, and if he protects the alley, then you have the opening. Or if you stay where you are with your partner, then that alley opens up on the right side. And when we were at the Tucson boot camp, I was playing with someone, and he had a cross-court dink, and I ran over to get the alley. And he kind of stayed where he was in his position. And I told him, I don't mind if you do a cross-court dink, but come with me after.
that's one of the beauty about in this boot camp when we talk about dancing with your partner is this constant movement of that ball, which happens as the ball moves. So you dictate the ball positioning. The other part about this placement and positioning part of it is I'm giving you more food to thought for thought on this one is I often say that you dictate your positioning. So if you're going to hit a cross court dink, you know where you gotta have to be because by the time you hit a cross court dink, you know which third you're going to cover. So at some point, if your legs are tired and if you really don't want to move, you probably know where you want to hit a ball so that you can probably stay where you want to be. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and you're kind of burying the lead on me here because my next question is, if you don't want to move that much on the court, if you're tired or your partner just doesn't move at all, they just want to stay in that center, where should you dink the ball or go to?
Ideally, will be probably straight in front of you, or a little bit in between the two players, which allows you to stay more in that zone. At least take a little breather before you can do something else.
And you're burying the lead on me again. Because when I was working with a lot of the players at the first Vero Beach boot camp last week, I would often place the ball right in between my two opponents. And typically the reaction time is just a split second too late, and the ball's either popped up or put in the net, if not floating in between the two.
And even at the highest level, even though we know that what we are supposed to do there, I'm saying we am probably not in that level yet, but I would probably say that most of us miss most of those balls in the between, or we clash battles and then there's always this big confusion of who's got to take the ball. Is it the forehand? Is it the backhand? And this leads to a lot of things. But I think we've already done a podcast. I don't know about webinar, but I think we did something on that podcast about. And there's been articles written also about who takes the ball in the middle. Who takes the ball in the middle is really determined by the angle of the ball and which third is. So I generally simplify it. In my boot camp, there's a lot of intention around it, but I simplify it into a very simplistic term. The person pretty much on the middle third takes the ball if it's angling towards the middle, which means basically whoever is in the middle third. Because if you break the court into thirds, one third is the alley, one third is the middle, and the other third is the other alley. As the ball is moving, wherever the ball is dictates which 2/3 you as a team are going to cover. And so at some point, someone is going to be in the middle third. It could be a forehand, it could be a backhand, it could be a left-handed and a right-handed forehand too. In either cases, the person in the middle third takes it. That's as simple as that. That allows us to be much more efficient in the middle and also efficient to know where the ball is.
Now, one of the things we haven't talked about is partner communication when it comes to partner play. And just talking about who's taking the lobs or who's going to start serving, that's not really, or whether the forehand takes the middle, that's not enough, though, is it?
It could be.
It could be?
It could be too. But I personally, I say that's personally, I don't intend saying that everyone, but I do recommend that to anyone who wants to implement that one. I personally, in my game, as well as whoever I play with, I consciously make an effort to call every ball, and it's sort of predetermine that one before I start the game with my partner, whoever I'm playing with. I say, hey, I'm going to call every ball, irrelevant of how obvious it is or not, so that we have a clear communication between each other. So that actually helps in every situation. And I would thank this particular tip, which was not given to me, but actually observed years ago. I think it was on my first ever nationals when I went in 2009. One of the greatest players of my time, and still a great player. He's a very young guy named Steve Wong. When I met him for the first time and playing in national finals, and he was playing a few number of matches, but I did also watch the finals where he won, and he was playing with someone who he has played for a long time with. But it was incredibly eye-opening for me, despite the fact that I come from some really strong racket sport background. I was very impressed by the way that despite all that, he was calling every ball, and it really, really helped his partner. Also, despite the fact they knew each other's game well, they knew exactly where they had to be on the court, but it was something he constantly does, and he still does in his play. And so I'm very grateful to Steve Wong for that. Steve, by the way, thank you again. This is something which I definitely recommend. And one of my students, who is now a very wonderful teacher, Doug Koch in Yuba City, California, also practices that and also teaches that to rest of his students. He does this day. So that's up to you too, Doug.
And that's a lot about partner positioning and partner play. And this and much, much more is covered in the 5th session of boot camp. And now that you've been here, what would you say to someone who is considering signing up for Prame's boot camp?
That it's well worth it. It's a great learning experience. It's a great camaraderie. You, yourself, Randy, and Prame are a great team together. It was a lot of fun as well as a lot of knowledge that was gained.
And is there anything else that you would like us to know?
No, just keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing.
Great. We talked about this a couple of days ago about how boot camp is a progression, and it certainly is, but I liken it more to a feedback loop, or an even better example, which you really like, is a Zen circle. Can you tell everyone what a Zen circle is?
I'm happy to say what a Zen circle
Okay.
is. Just my spiritual practice, I would probably say, or a spiritual Zen circle is something which is an incomplete circle. Generally, it's a circle which is it's a brushwork from starts off from one end to the other without actually closing the circle, which basically means it's pretty much an incomplete. So it's not really a circle, so it's an incomplete one, and which basically means that just as in life, as much as in life, in pickleball, everything is incomplete. We're always learning and growing, and so that part of and it's nothing any different in pickleball. So we're constantly learning and improving and trying to garner as much as knowledge as possible as we play and enjoy this game. And so it comes again across as when you're playing. We're always going to be learning through even when we're doing placement and positioning.
And that's why I liken it to the Zen circle, because the first step is evaluation and assessment, where you analyze players' games and abilities. Then you step it up in the second session with drop shot till you drop, where you start building on technique. And it's kind of important to develop a good technique for a drop shot, isn't it?
Drop shot is the most difficult shot in the game. I do agree. It's the most. I often call it the critical shot in the game because that sets up the serving team to come into the non-volley zone line. I always think the serving team has a disadvantage being at the back of the line and trying to make the way to the kitchen line. So having said that, an effective great drop shot, be it the 3rd, 5th, or 7th, or 9th, whatever that means, is a very effective one. And it could be also a third shot drive. But either way, whatever it is that you hit, whatever gets you to the non-volley zone line is an important one, and it's something which I totally heavily recommend learning and mastering. And it's a very difficult one. It takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, but I'm happy to say that a lot of people who are at the boot camp generally do very well because it's a pretty long session for them to do. And by end of that session, their lower backs and their quads and legs are pretty hurting. You generally get to sleep well that night.
And for the 3rd session, you build more on the drop shot and get players working on being a shark at the net.
It's all about being aggressive at the net. It's one of the analogies I often say. You got to be. The analogy often I give something which I call it the crouching tiger technique, which basically imagine the tiger in the wild out there and ready to attack its prey. But while it's trying to do that, it's trying to crouch, crawl, and wait patiently until it's got the opportunity where the prey is not paying attention, and then attack so that it can fill its hungry belly. So it's in the same analogy. I often say your slow game or your net game is your prep work. It's basically you're crouching and you're crawling and waiting for the opportunity for your opponents to put a ball high up, paying attention, or their paddles are down, they're out of position for you to attack. I'm all about aggression. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you gotta have to be only a slow player. I'm all about aggression, but just be smart about it. Know when to pull the trigger and when to be able to pounce on your prey.
And the fourth session, all about consistency, you're giving players skills and techniques so that they can begin to constantly make all those drop shots and overheads and start being able to place the shots better,
Yes.
as well as being able to drop those banging shots that's coming at them.
Yes, we do. We do a lot of those practices out there in the different modules you named, and the most important one, of course, is the how to block. It's called a block volley or a block shot. How to block a hard hitting ball, and I'm pretty sure most of you who listen are watching this one. You'd probably say that we are dealing with a lot of hard hitting bangers in our community, and we get. Lots of tattoos and welches by the time of the game. Sometimes some of them actually don't want to come back to play, and a beautiful game we all love. And how could we make this a fun game so that those hard-hitting balls are not anymore a danger or a threat for you? And by the time that particular session is over, most of the players are actually enjoying it so much they think like, oh, maybe we should crank the speed a little higher and see if we can do it. We do give them a lot of speed on that ball, and despite that, they're very capable. And I think in one of my previous podcasts, I think I mentioned about an 89-year-old gentleman who had handled a very a a whole ball machine full of hard hitting balls, and he was able to block it, and later on ended up winning a tournament in a month's time after that boot camp was over. It was last year in Vero Beach here in Florida. And he called me and told me how happy he was. And he also said something about while they were hitting hard balls to him, he had one word to tell them: bring it on, baby. Thanks, John, for that. I did hear from his wife that unfortunately John did not survive last year. He did. At least he went with a lot of joy, knowing that he had won a pickleball tournament before he moved on. Rest in peace, my friend.
And the other thing to point out for John, because he was 88, 89 years old, when he was in this 89 when he was in this tournament, he had to play down in the 70s because he didn't have any competition in his age bracket.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
That was a really it was a joyful moment when I got a phone call from him, and for him to joyfully share how impactful it was for him. So people out there who really struggle with those hard hitting balls, let me know. Join me in one of my boot camps. You will probably never be afraid after that.
And with all these new or enhanced skills and techniques, we progress to what we just talked about, which is partner play, the boot camp favorite, which is dancing with your partner. And we talked a lot about the strategies about partner play. Anything you want to add about dancing with your partner at boot camp that goes on?
The partner play, the dancing of your partner session is actually divided into three sub topics. One is just getting to create that how to move with your partner in a very safe manner, and so that one section is all about how you move consistently and constantly. So there's a whole bunch of drills we do to get that consistency, and then the second part of that subtopic is how to create the opening against your opponents while you're dancing with your partner, and then the third one, what do you do when you get that opening? So it's a three-part of breaking down the dancing of your partner. So it's all about placement and positioning. It's a very important part of the game. And so by the time that is over, I think there's a lot of glee and happiness in most of the participants almost all the participants, right, how great that particular session is, which is a culmination of basically all the drills they have been doing for the last 2 days before they get into that session, and a lot of light bulbs go out at that point, and the ha moments, the epiphany, is that what you would say?
Epiphany.
Epiphany. There you go. Sorry for my accent. Sorry, but unfortunately, I speak 5 languages, and sometimes I might not get the accent.
And the sixth session is the one-on-one where you have, I would guess, about 45 minutes with each participant. And this is what you discuss. You've been with them for, I don't know, already, 12 to 14 hours through the earlier sessions of boot camp. And then you spend another 45 minutes to an hour with each of them. And I'm just going back to what happened last Sunday when you were doing your one-on-ones. The session starts at 2, and I don't think we left until like 6:30 that night or something like that. So you were spending, so you're spending a lot of time with the participants on their individual needs and what they needed to improve upon and what they were doing really well.
Yes, that session actually is a very individualized, and it's not only about my observations about what I see, and it's actually called, take it home baby. So it's basically me giving them a very homework, so to speak, a very specific thing I really want them to work on so that they get better at it, and continue to hone their skills on that one or one of the techniques things, and we work on it so that they get actually a very specific feedback from my observation of their individualized game. And that session is also used for any other questions they might have which were unanswered or they still need answers for, and if they needed drills or specific ways or techniques which they can do. So I do give a lot of time. So it's normally supposed to be from 2 to 4 o'clock. It's only a 2-hour session, but generally ends up being a pretty long session. Generally, it's to 6 hours to 7 hours of session, even though there's only 8 players for these boot camps. I do give a lot of my individual attention and time, and it's joyful to me, and I think it's joyful to them too.
And the only thing I'd like to add is we have a couple of ball machines. So while you're giving the one-on-one with this one particular participant, we have 2 other participants, hitting the balls around or blocking the balls with the machines. We'll have another court going on with some drills, and maybe even another court going on with actual live play going on with the remaining participants. So
yes.
no one's sitting on their hands while you're spending the time with one, and the 7 other people don't have anything to do.
Yes,
while that's going on during that session.
And I do give full credit for that to Randy here,
thank you.
Who works with me on these, and so makes sure that the rest of the participants are getting their money's worth, and in a way that they continue to keep honing their skills as I spend time with each one of them as long as I can.
And the boot camp progression, or the circle, is close to being complete. I know the Zen circle is not complete. With the 7th and final session, where you do live coaching during gains and points.
Yes, that absolutely right on that particular one. It's a session, a 3-hour session. It's basically live play. They're just playing, and I don't stop at every point and every minute of it. I let the game proceed as it goes, and they try to apply the game, and they might struggle with it, but they continue doing their sessions. But most importantly, what I'm looking for mostly is like, hey, here's a technique strategy question, or here's why would you hit a ball here, and why did you think you missed this ball, or why did you choose that particular strategy. It's more of getting them to think through before they strike the ball, and which again is a question of time management, the type of strokes I want them to be able to hit, or so that they give themselves a lot more time to process as they play, so that they have enough options in their hands rather than react to a point.
So you start playing on the first day of boot camp with live points or live play. You progress through boot camp, you learn and progress, and the last day you put it all together and you do the same thing. You kind of play out games and points, which is kind of like your Zen circle. There's a
Absolutely.
loop,
That's
but
something
it's not closed.
because there's a lot to learn, and I often normally end this one. I often tell my participants that you're going to probably struggle with your initial days and maybe weeks of putting this game into place, and every fiber of your body wants to change and go back to the old ways. And I do tell them, I insist that please know that even though you might be struggling and you might be losing a lot of games or recreational play, just keep practicing at it. Once it becomes part of your muscle memory, it just flows. And it just takes some time, sometimes depending on each one's skill level and intentions. But as they keep working at it, they just absolutely get better at it. I know it, I've seen it, and I've experienced it, and I've also had enough feedback from all the past participants to know that they do love it, and they enjoy how that has impacted their game. This is not really about winning medals and accolades, which is not very out of the box thinking, which has happened too. But having said that, it's mostly joyful to be able to play a game which we all love so much in a way which allows them to enjoy and joyfully enjoy, in a way that it's not about winning, but being able to enjoy every stroke, able to construct like a chess game and play the cat and mouse with your opponents on a game, and find the joy of playing this game in a way which just hums in you.
Yeah, my joy is when I hit a bad drop shot and I'm still able to make my way up to the kitchen. And that's my personal joy on the court. So.
All power to you, Randy.
And so the reason why I talk about the Zen Circle, because the Zen Circle is open, because you go through everything at boot camp, and then once you leave, you're still going out and improving your game with what you learned and everything. So there's still that opening. It's not like everything just stops and ends at boot camp, including reverting to what you used to do and all that. You keep applying what you learned and applying that to your game in the future.
That's right. And on top of it, what the Zen Circle does is like often when I also say it's like when in doubt, go back to your basics. So it's in the same way. It's like if you're on the end of that circle and when you're not progressing, you might probably want to go and sharpen your basic fundamental games and come back, and it'll only make your game better.
And what you really love, you kind of mentioned this with John, who was the Bring It On baby guy. But the other thing that you love during boot camp is when that proverbial light bulb just clicks on somebody.
Yes, I truly, I find a sweet joy in that moments when I see that aha moment which happens in them, and it's like they're like little babies, and they're like so excited, and like, I got it, I finally got it, and it clicks. It clicks for them, and I'm like this little, dad who sees the child making its first step. When I saw my daughter making her first step from crawling, and making her first step walking, trying to make her attempt to walk. The type of glee and joy I find in me is the same I find when I finally see the student gets that light bulb and that I got it moment. I just finally got everything you just said, and it just clicked for me. And boot camps are very individualized attention, but as also it's very different from each other player. So in every information I give is very specific to the individual player, and not it's not a global presentation, general presentation. So I really try my best to give my individual attention to every one of those 8 participants out there.
And for the most recent one, what we're calling VB1 or Vero Beach 1, can you give an example of someone where that light bulb came on?
I can think of one person. There's a lot of them, but the one person I can think of is a gentleman named Thomas, and this gentleman actually is coming to this boot camp for the second time. He was here last year, so he had already experienced and had learned a lot, and he kept telling me how much my ears keep ringing every time when I back up or when I'm hitting a bad shot or a drop shot, and where my weight transfer was, the body mechanics were, and there were a lot of things I told him last year which he applied, and he was extremely good this year. But one of the observations I made when I watched him play was, like I said, Thomas, I don't see you hitting a lot of drop shot in this game. You just keep driving every ball. Something which he probably reverted to because he was probably dealing with the type of players in his group where everyone was driving, and so he probably reverted to an old tennis habit of driving the balls.
Kind of win in Rome.
That's right. And so on the final day, on the third day of on the one-on-one sessions I had with him, I finally told, "Hey Thomas, here's a tip I'm going to give you. It's about time management. I just really, really want you to slow down and do this particular." I gave him a specific drill to do, and all of a sudden it just clicked, and he started hitting like drop shots, never missed. And after that, when he started playing, he said, "I didn't even know how much time I had. It looked like I could sit down and have a coffee and even blow a cigarette before I could hit the ball." Was his own response, and when he realized that how much time he actually had to hit a ball, and it changed completely his game. That was his aha moment. It probably took him a second boot camp to understand that, and I was really, really happy that he did. He's so joyful that he wants to come back next year.
And you just mentioned that boot camp is really, really individualized. And what I want to emphasize is that there's only 8 individuals that come to boot camp. And this is what I want to be really clear on. This is not a coach to student ratio of 1 to 8, where you have 32 participants and Prem and 3 other coaches running around. There are only 8 participants. And so you're giving all of your attention to these 8 people, not a whole batch of 32 or 24 participants that are in there.
It is important to me, and I think we made that decision to only invite 8 people to this group because it's because I wanted to spend quality time with them so that they also get enough out of me as much as they get a lot of themselves. I can get a lot out of them in terms of pickleball skills, and also there are a certain number of things we do for a lot of cohesion which happens between the group, including a dinner which is organized on the very first night, where they get together and get to know each other in ways, and sort of a bonding which happens. So even during the sessions, sometimes which can be very tough, and there's a sort of a camaraderie which develops between the sort of an intimate rapport which happens between the 8 participants, which makes it easier for them, and they support each other as they also grow as a group, and they generally tend to become good friends and continue to have rapport with them post boot camp. Individually, and we experienced that in Tucson recently, and we do also put all the participants, in a group where they can actually communicate with each other if they want to outside the parameters of the pickleball boot camp, and some of them. My experience with some of the participants from Richmond. I don't think you were in my team at that time yet. But there was a couple of participants who met at that particular boot camp and ended up becoming extremely good pickleball partners, and they were joyfully sharing how they won a few number of medals together since their evolution as a team, because they understood the strategies and they were able to implement it together, and they did a great job with that.
This must have been like 2017 or 2016 Richmond.
I think it was 2017.
And just kind of give a little recap with boot camp. There's only 8 participants, 4 days, 7 session, well over 15 hours of instruction. We talked earlier about how I believe it's Sunday night. You were there till 6:45. I think other nights we were there till
7 probably or 7.
yeah. I think Friday night we had to leave early, and then Saturday it was probably 6:30 or 7 that night too. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's dedication.
Officially, yes, there's 15 plus hours, but non-official hours are probably more. We spend a lot of time after hours, hanging out, playing if the people want to play, and just have fun. But truth to be told, I actually hang out, like love playing pickleball. It's like relaxation for me.
And we've talked about this before. This is your career and your passion. It's not a side hustle.
Yes,
It's not like you're the Uber of pickleball coaches or anything like that. This is your true job.
I'm not sure. There are people who are full thorough professionals of being Uber drivers, but I'm definitely very passionate about what I do, and it just happens to be a job or work or whatever title they want to give me on that or label. As far as I'm concerned, I love what I do, and I'll continue doing it. Hopefully, one day I will probably just die on a pickleball court.
But you're so dedicated that even after boot camp, you follow up with all the participants after about 3 weeks or a month just to make sure that their game's progressing and if they have any questions or need anything.
It's very important to me, and this is, it's not a business decision or anything like that. It's important to me just because, I just want to know where these players are and what they are progressing and where they are in their journey. And now, is there anything I could do to help them, give them tips, or help them with any information which would help them, grow as a pickleball player. It's not trying to get them back to business or something like that. It's more of wanting them to know that I really care about them and I really want to know where they are, and I will do as long as they want me to do it. And without, there's no any other intention than seeing their progress.
And so that's the pickleball instruction and coaching, but we really do go above and beyond at these boot camps, and that's because we don't want you to worry about where you're going to eat or how much water you need to bring, like 36 bottles of water or whatever else. So you receive a catered lunch on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday through Monday, there'll be plenty of water, sports drinks, snacks, nuts, fruits to keep you fueled and hydrated. When you sign up, you receive immediate access to the Drop Shot Masterclass and an electronic version of your best-selling book, Smart Pickleball. When you arrive at boot camp, you'll get a t-shirt, a nice swag bag full of all types of goodies, and you'll also receive a Guru signature paddle.
And a smart hard copy
Yep,
book.
and the soft cover, signed soft cover autograph by Prame of the book Smart Pickleball. And past participants have been really grateful and amazed with all they do receive at boot camp. In addition to the coaching, it's actually a complete experience for them. It's not like they just show up at the courts for 2 hours and then go back to the hotel or home and then they, wash, rinse, repeat for the next day. They really have a true experience.
And that is one of the reasons why I think it's called an intensive program, because it is meant for people who really are dedicated to improving their game, and it is very intensive because we spend a lot of time, and the participants a lot of time, and they get a lot out of me as much as I get a lot out of them. So it's a win-win situation for both ways, and so I would say win-win and win for this gentleman here. But he's the guy who does a lot of work. I give him a lot of credit for that. I don't know. I would not be able to do anything without him.
You're too kind. So if you're somewhere between a 3-0 and a 4-0 player and want to really improve your pickleball game and want to have an amazing pickleball experience, here's where you can go. What I will say, the past 4 boot camps have sold out. The last 2 last year sold out. Vero Beach 1 or VB1 was sold out last week. The upcoming VB2 is sold out. So what we did was we opened up a third Vero Beach boot camp, VB3, that starts on February 15th, right after Valentine's Day. And I think after that, the next boot camp, Costa Rica is sold out, and then Richmond in May. There's only 3 spots left. I know that. And I think the Vero Beach 3 one that's coming up in February is starting to fill up. And then there's Kansas City in June, Fayence near Nice, France in July, Vail, Colorado in August, Sacramento in September, Kona, Hawaii in October, and back to Tucson in November.
You give them the full schedule.
That's a lot of travel.
I do agree. That's a lot of travel, but I will do anything for pickleball.
Yeah, it's worth it, and it's fun, and you can see that you get a lot at boot camp, and you get even more because if you go and use code webinar by February 10th, and not only will you improve your pickleball game by leaps and bounds, you'll have an amazing experience and a great time, but you'll also receive $500 off. All this for $14.97. And Prem, we always ask participants to fill out a quick evaluation. Your coaching is always a 5 out of 5, and we get a huge range of responses for what their favorite part of boot camp was. And we always ask what their least favorite part was. And what's the 2 typical responses for that?
Mostly that it is too quick. It ended too quick, that they would have wanted more time. And the other one is generally a blank because they don't know what to answer there because they didn't find anything least favorite.
And just to be clear, when they say they wanted more time, they're just sad that it's over with. It's not like we don't give them enough time.
That's
at
right.
boot camp.
Yeah, it's
as we said earlier, we're probably running 20 to 21 hours of actual time that we're giving the participants when we're at the boot camps. There's a lot of time. And I'm going to give our contact information a bit, but first I want to mention that if you're coming with a partner, you want to experience boot camp again, we do have repeat boot campers like Tom, who's come to boot camp twice and he wants to come back a third time because he just enjoys it so much. And if you're a former clinic participant, and we'll talk more about clinics in a second, but you can contact me for an even larger discount. And boot camp is for those 3 to 4-0 players that pretty much have the fundamentals down. But for those players that need work on fundamentals, you have a good number of clinics coming up. Can you talk about clinics and how they're a bit different from boot camps?
Clinics is different in the sense it's a 2.5-hour session every day. We work mostly on the fundamentals. Trying to find the ideal serve and the ideal return of serve and drop shots, the dinks and the volleys. So it's 2.5 hours each day, and it's generally a little larger group than the boot camps. You do get my attention, but it's much more limited because the group is a little bit more bigger, and it can be as big as 48. Obviously, there will be people to assist me in these clinics. But still, it means that my time will be much more limited as in the clinics. But it's a very effective, well organized clinic, which has been very successful over the years. And but the boot camp is much more individualized, and it's obviously just me all the time on you in a way. A lot of growling which happens to make sure my participants are on top of where they want to go in their personal games. So it's much more, it's between more individualized. It's more focused attention in a boot camp. To the clinic is more, you get my time, but it's not as intense as a boot camp. And it's much more, larger group. Generally, it's a larger group. So it's definitely no fluff. I don't work on clinics that way either. And so you will get my time, but it's just not as much as in a boot camp.
And if you're interested in clinics, there's one in Richmond in May, Kansas City in June, Vail in August, Sacramento in September, and Tucson in November. Prem and I have talked about doing this in the past. If you sign up for one of the clinics, and we'll go ahead and get you the past clinic participant, returning boot camp participant rate of $997, which is $1,000 off the list price. So for example, if someone signs up for or has attended a clinic and they want to come to the Vero Beach boot camp in February, we'll give them the $997 price for a returning clinic participant.
We will.
Okay.
I'm a little hesitant because, but we will absolutely give that price for someone who has already attended one of the clinics or intending to attend one, or I mean, have at least booked one prior to attending the boot camp, so they already have taken. Just imagine if there's a boot camp in Richmond and you want to do the clinic, which is normally a few days prior to the boot camp, and you want to sharpen your skills before coming into the boot camp, that will be a good idea. Then in that case, probably, I think you might probably offer the $997. Would you?
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's straightforward. I think it's a gift to the clinic and the boot camp participants for people who are dedicated to just honing their skills. It's not about dedicated to my business or the Pickleball Guru brand, but more dedicated to improving their own skills.
For all the boot camp information, go to pballbootcamp.com, or you can go to pickleballguru.com and you can find the link to all the boot camp information, but also there you'll find the link to all the clinic information. And if you're finding this webinar just through the power of the interwebs or the YouTubes, if you go to pickleballguru.com, you can sign up for Prem's newsletter where you get tons of tips, tricks, and strategies that Prem mentioned earlier about how there's lots of blog posts and podcasts and videos all linked somewhere on the website. So you can see all the pickleball information that you have to offer, Prem. And here's your contact information. You can contact Prem on 773-615-0478. And that's Prem at thepickleballguru.com. Like we mentioned earlier, if you're a past clinic participant, if you want to come to a boot camp and you want to bring a partner, whether it's a spouse or your pickleball partner, we can certainly look into giving you an additional discount. My information is Randy at thepickleballguru.com. You can call or text me at 703-459-0001. And I think that's about it.
So, while I say happy pickling and enjoy every moment of life. Thank you again.
Yes, and in the tradition of doing our webinars late at night, again, it's almost midnight, and this time you can blame me because I insisted on watching the UVA Virginia Tech game earlier tonight, so we didn't start recording until sometime after 10 o'clock.
I didn't even realize it was past midnight.
But thank you, Guru Nation, and hope to see you on the courts, and hope you come out to do a clinic or a boot camp because it really is an amazing time. Every boot camp I've been involved in, it's just been spectacular, and the participants have just loved it. It really is an amazing experience for everybody.
Well, thank you, Randy, because I've been doing it for a while, but it's great to see someone. Randy happens to be one of my past participants of a clinic who joined my team, and so he's been deeply involved and been actually closely involved with the evolution of my teaching, but also the evolution of the boot camp, so that he actually has an hands-on experience of what has gone on and share the true joy I've been actually garnering just for myself for all this time. So have a wonderful, blissful day and blissful month and year. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks, Prem.
Thank you.